India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval met with President Vladimir Putin at St. Petersburg, weeks after PM Modi met the presidents of both Russia and Ukraine. As NSA Doval conveyed Prime Minister's message to President Putin, remember this visit comes amid echoes from both sides on India becoming a mediator in this war.
We are waiting for His Excellency Mr. Modi in Kazan, and I propose to organize a bilateral meeting on the 22nd of October in order to analyze results of our joint work dealing with implementation of agreements which we reached during his visit to Moscow, and to discuss the future-oriented actions. So we are waiting for our good friend, His Excellency Mr. Modi, and best regards to him on my behalf.
As Prime Minister told you during a telephone talk that he was keen to brief you about his visit to Ukraine and his meeting with President Zelensky. And he wanted me to come specially and personally and brief you about the talks. The talk was in a very close format. It was only the two leaders. He had his two persons with him. I happened to be with the Prime Minister. So I was a witness to me, sir. I attended that conversation.
Now, the Russian president has proposed a bilateral meeting with Prime Minister Modi on the sidelines of the BRICS Summit in Kazan on the 22nd of October this year. To talk more about this, I'm joined on the broadcast by Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar. Ambassador Sajjanhar, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us on Global Mirror. Sir, I want to understand from you what the significance of this meeting between NSA Doval and President Putin has for both nations, specifically at a time when both Russia and Ukraine have urged India to be an official mediator in this war.
Thank you very much, Shreya. It's not only Ukraine and Russia which have asked India to be a mediator, but I think there have been voices that have been emanating from many other countries in the world who have said that India is perhaps the only country which has access to both sides. I don't think any world leader, any significant, substantial world leader today can really go to Russia and be received very warmly and with great respect, and go to Ukraine the next month and be received with equal warmth and respect there also. So I think Prime Minister Modi has had conversations. He said that there have been certain interesting ideas that have come up. He has, after coming back from Ukraine, he spoke to President Joe Biden, briefed him about his conversations, also briefed him about conversations with President Putin, and he did the same with President Putin, told him about what he had discussed with President Zelensky. So I think the tempo is rising, the pace is growing, and the expectation also and anticipation, if I could use that word, is also growing that, this activity by Prime Minister Modi, by India, could lead to at least the beginning of some initial contacts between the two sides and conversation and dialogue between the two sides, which could lead to ultimate negotiations and bring the war to a close. I think
Ambassador Sajjanhar, can I then ask you, would India want to get into it? Would India want to become the official mediator? Because when you're the mediator, it's not just about holding diplomatic talks. It has to be, getting into the intricacies of this entire conflict, deciding on and, mediating between the two sides as to which and how much territory is whose and how to go about it. Would India want to get its hands dirty in this war then?
I think India is definitely following a very sober, considered, step-by-step approach. It doesn't want to jump into it like, some of the others have done, what Turkey had done earlier, that, it came in directly in the role of a mediator, what China came. It produced a 12-point, 13-point plan, which, of course, didn't fly at all. It wasn't accepted, except by Russia, because I think it takes on board all the concerns and all the interests of Russia. But as far as the other countries are concerned, they did not support it at all. So India is taking its own time, biding its own time, and feeling its way as it goes forward. So, you know what Prime Minister Modi had also said, two aspects: not an era of war, and no resolution can be arrived at on the battlefield. So we are at the moment
Hmm.
quite, happy about exchanging messages, sending messages, and trying to bring the two sides together. And I think we'll really have to wait and see. A lot of hard work will be needed. But then there is, Prime Minister
Yeah.
Modi is going to meet Joe Biden on the 21st at the Delaware Quad Summit.
Yeah.
He'll meet Putin in Kazan. He might meet Zelensky also at the United Nations next week, when at the Future of the Earth Summit.
Hmm.
So I think there are so many other conversations
Hmm.
that are also going to take place. So we'll really have to wait and see. I think it'll be,
Hmm.
it'll be difficult to prejudge at this stage whether India wants to get into, the hard bargaining as far as the negotiations are
Yeah.
concerned. So, yeah.
President Putin has proposed a bilateral meeting on the sidelines of the BRICS Summit in Kazan this year, Ambassador. How do you see that going about for the two countries amid this conflict and the fact that, both leaders have met earlier, they've talked about the war, and like you said, Prime Minister has reiterated it time and again that this is not an era of war. This time around, with the BRICS Summit happening, do you see any sort of forward movement then?
Well, you know what, President Putin, when he was speaking with Mr. Doval, he said, I want to meet him on the 22nd in Kazan, where we can discuss the forward movement in all the agreements and all the decisions that we had taken when Prime Minister Modi visited Moscow in July. So basically, it is,
Hmm.
those discussions were
Hmm.
more on economic cooperation and how to take the bilateral relationship forward. They were not really so much on
Yeah.
Russia-Ukraine conflict per se. So I think that is what his idea would be. But definitely, this would, on the sidelines of all these meetings, this would definitely be an issue that will come up. And I think President Putin, if I could sort of mention, I think he also would like, although he's in an advantageous position, Russia has also suffered. So he would also like to put an end to this war, but of course, keeping all the territory that
Hmm.
he's been able to acquire, that he's been able to occupy. So, I think something will need to be worked out, and more discussions will be required to see what is
Yeah.
the best solution that is acceptable to both sides.
My last question to you, Ambassador Sajjanhar. President Zelensky of Ukraine had suggested that India hold a peace summit as well, and how, India can play that role. Do you see that happening? Do you see the Indian government really considering holding a peace summit?
No, I don't think, as of now, I don't think there is any, chance of that. Although, meaning if India were to hold a peace summit, India is the only country which can hold a peace summit and make sure that both Ukraine and Russia are at the negotiating table, are at the talking table,
Hmm.
discussion table. Because, Russia did not go to
Hmm.
Switzerland, Russia has not gone to the other peace
Yeah.
conferences that have been organized in the past. But India has that
Hmm.
uh, mojo, if I could call it, that it can get both of them, all sides
Hmm.
together at the same table. But I think
Hmm.
India will
Hmm.
venture into it only if it sees that there is some reasonable hope of some forward movement. I'm not calling it a
Hmm.
success, but some reasonable hope of a forward movement. At the moment, it does not appear to be so.
Hmm.
So I don't think that India would be, at this moment, be
And do
keen
you
to.
think, therefore, Ambassador Sajjanhar, the can the West possibly derail the peace talks, the peace move, forward movement?
I
Could
think
that happen?
by putting conditions like that the borders of Ukraine are inviolable, in the sense that the four provinces of Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia and Kharkiv, that what Russia has said that they belong to them, and what was acquired, the territory that was acquired by them in 2014 after the referendum in Crimea, saying that, that also has to come back to Ukraine. So these are really non-starters, but I can
Yeah.
understand that, before any negotiation starts, you have to put in your maximalist position up there, out in the front. And only as a result of negotiations do you keep whittling down or watering down your position. So, I think the West, by
Okay.
staying firm on these particular conditions and saying that, no conference, no meeting can take place unless Russia agrees to that, I think that'll be a no-go. That'll be a non-starter.
All right. All right. We'll have to see how it moves forward from here on. I'll have to wrap it up here. Ambassador Sajjanhar, thank you very much. Always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you very
Shreya.
much for joining us tonight and sharing your
Thank you.
perspective.